Alright everybody, welcome back, and yes, here we have the A-18C MLU-II. I haven't really seen many people talking about this, but this is the new Finnish top-tier jet for the update. And just a heads up, like I normally do, I'm going to drop the A because it's kind of pointless. There have been a lot of people asking me for some F-18 late gameplay ever since the original American one came out in March. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is probably going to be the only time I make a video on these jets, unless something crazy happens. Now, you don't hear me saying stuff like this about jets a lot, and I know some of y'all are going to say it's a skill issue, but I cannot stand flying any of the top-tier F-18s for several reasons, which I'm going to get onto. And you can play around everything that I talk about, just to keep that in mind. It's just incredibly unenjoyable to do so. To be quite frank, the Hornet at top tier just is not a good airframe at all. There are several issues with its flight performance, and one of those is just its speed. This thing is incredibly slow. At most cases, even at altitude, you're going to be maxing out at around like Mach 1.2 if you're lucky. On the deck, you're going to be sitting there going around Mach 1.08. If you like doing the early, radar missile slinging at the beginning of the match at high altitude, no, you're not going to be doing that with this jet. But the much bigger issue is what you can probably see in the background. This thing bleeds speed like an absolute pig the moment you press the elevators. The F2 is also slow. It's a bit faster than the Hornet, to be fair, but it's also slow. And yet it is so much more enjoyable to fly because it actually has energy retention. Sure, you might be a little bit slower getting to the fight, but at least once you get there, your airframe isn't going to lose all of its speed after like 3 turns. The one positive thing, at least, is that it does actually have some pretty decent acceleration to get you back up to speed, but like, so does everything else of this tier, really. And it's not particularly good in a 1v1 dogfight either. Willie Walrus made a video on it if you want to check it out. I'll have a link in the description. But it essentially places it like right below the F-15A in terms of dogfighting capability. Which is fine, but it also means you get a plane which is slower than everything else at top tier, which bleeds way more speed than everything else at top tier. And in the off chance that you do happen to get in a 1v1 dogfight, against most of the jets that you're seeing, there's a very good chance you'll lose. And so what this means is that you have very little early game presence. You have to play this more defensive. What I usually found myself doing is going off to the side of the map and waiting for everyone else to start engaging, basically just trying to avoid the early, BVR engagement completely. And this is how you really deal with that major downside it has. The issue is that when you do that, there is a very good chance that at least half of the enemy team will be dead by the time you actually get to the fight. You can try and push the enemy team really like I'm doing right here, but you can see just how much faster that Eurofighter is going. Most of your kills are going to get yoinked by their missiles before yours can get there, just simply because their missiles start faster and have more energy. And after dodging 2 or 3 missiles, you are going to have no speed left and are probably just going to get focused down. Now, that is one of the benefits of this plane, is the kit. Of course, you can see me using the AMRAAM-C5 in the background. I did it just for this one clip to show you all that it does have it. I would not recommend using it on the actual jet. If you want to know why, I made a whole video, talking about exactly why the AMRAAM-C5 is really not worth it in War Thunder. I'll have it linked at the end of the video. But essentially, the AMRAAM-C5 is only really good for those like long-range, BVR engagements, which the F-18 does not do well at. But on the plus side, you do actually get access to 10 AMRAAMs and a total of 12 missiles with the wingtip sidewinders. That is a very healthy kit, and it means that whenever you do actually get to the battle, you can kind of just fire them willy-nilly and not really have to worry. 10 radar missiles is a very healthy kit for top tier, especially because right now radar missiles are the meta. Now, would I still rather have, 6 or 8 on an F-15? Yes, I would. But credit where credit's due, this is a very healthy kit. One of the other major advantages you see in the background is actually the fact that this thing gets access to 1,400 countermeasures. Yes, that's right. 1,400 countermeasures on a plane. It gets the normal 120 internal countermeasures, plus 8 VOL rails as well. This is an absolutely absurd amount of countermeasures. Really, you are never going to run out. And honestly, because of this, for Air RB, there is no reason to play any other top-tier Hornet. You should always just play the Finnish one. The thing is, though, 120 pops of normal countermeasures is already enough for most engagements. It's a rare day that you'll manage to burn through 120 pops, so it's nice to have, but it doesn't really make a difference. Another reason why the Hornet can't really do the, long-range engagement at the beginning of the match is because the radar is absolutely terrible. Now, most top-tier Mexican radars, basically everyone that I can think of, feel terrible right now after the TWS Plus changes. They've always been like this. You know, I have big issues with the F-18, big issues with the Eurofighter, but the F-18's radar feels so bad. I think it is easily the worst one at top tier. Like, I cannot think of a worse radar that I have used. You've probably noticed in the background that I have had a ton of ghosting, where it will just track a completely different target for upwards of 10 or 15 seconds sometimes. Most of the time, if I switch to a target, my AMRAM is not even going to be looking at them. It's going to be somewhere off in the distance. And it's so bad that, honestly, I have mostly been using, like, normal, track lock, or I've been switching to HMD or ACM constantly. Which, to be fair, with how slow this thing is totally fine. Most of the time, I'm not engaging outside of, like, 20 kilometers anyways. But even the ACM feels terrible. I mean, if you've been watching the footage, you've probably seen it, but here's a perfect case of this. I'm trying to lock this F-18, who is coming directly at me, and for some reason, it insists on locking a dead body on the ground that is almost stationary, repeatedly, instead of the actual jet, which, in combination with my much slower speed, means I lose out on the kill. And in theory, this should be a great ACM. You actually have multiple modes. You have a nice big one for if you want to use it while you're dogfighting, and you have the tiny one that I'm using right there, which I usually prefer because of all the missiles and everything else that are flying around, AI targets and whatnot. And yet, for some stupid reason, it just refuses to lock onto the target. Here's another case the TWS is absolutely freaking out, and then I have no idea where the guy is. I wind up locking a completely different dude by accident. And it's incredibly infuriating when you have a plane which is already on the back foot just by nature of its design. And I have actually been killed by this quite a few times. And honestly, even with the pretty impressive kit that it has, especially the countermeasures, I think I would take most, if not all, 13.7s over this jet. I just don't see, 2 or maybe 4 extra AMRAMs and some extra countermeasures, which really aren't needed, as justifying the massive difference in both flight performance and radar. Again, you can make this thing work. Like I've been saying, if you just play it a bit more passively, you can get kills with it. The best term that I can use, and I hate saying this, is kind of like a support fighter. But if I was going to be playing it like a support fighter kind of thing at top tier, I'd much rather play the F2. Sure, it only gets 4 radar missiles, but it has way better flight performance. It's just much more survivable. For what it's worth, though, if you do play Sweden, it is just pretty much a straight upgrade over the existing F-18 you had beforehand. It is heavier, but you gain a ton of countermeasures and HMD, which is a nice to have. Of course, the MLU-II, who've noticed, does actually have the A added back, while the original one is just an F-18C. And there's a good reason for that. So the MLU-II program added several things that, we already talked about, like the HMD, a new cockpit, the BOL pods, but one of the crucial things that it brought back was actually air-to-ground capability. Unfortunately, though, for my ground RB gamers, Gaijin did keep it, well, mostly historically accurate. Finland, elected against purchasing any kind of, laser or IR guided munitions, instead opting to only get GPS guided ones in the form of the JDAM. And so unlike the Swiss ones, which happened to get a bunch of munitions they didn't actually use in real life, for some reason Gaijin didn't do the same and give them access to MAVs and everything else. They stuck to only GPS guided munitions, just like Finland did in real life. However, they did make one allowance, and like I have been told by somebody several times, this plane never used the JDAM ER, it only used the normal JDAM. Gaijin did also stick to the historical amount of JDAMs, they didn't give them the double launchers, so your best loadout for ground RB is 4 JDAM ERs. This means that realistically you can't really kill any tanks, but you are decent against the new SAMs. And in my case, it took me 4 JDAMs to kill this one SAM. He shot down the first one, I'm going to drop 3 more, and he's going to shoot down 2 of these before the final one kills it. This thing is probably decent for taking out SAMs, especially because the absolutely ludicrous amount of countermeasures it has. You can both chaff their data link and also just spam players to decoy off the IR missiles if they do get close enough to you. Because Gaijin decided to give them similar IRCCM to what the Stingers use. Regardless, though, I don't think this is a particularly impressive load, for CAS. The fact that it's essentially useless against any kind of moving target is a pretty big downside if you ask me. In any case, while those JDAMs are falling, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry if this is negative, and part of it sure might be a skill issue. But even though this is the best top tier Hornet, at least for ARB, it's still a Hornet at the end of the day. Hope you all have a great day though, and I'll catch y'all next time. So, peace, y'all.